Well, greetings friends and welcome to BBP. How do you define faith? I'm going to tell you today how Jesus defines it. Keep watching. In case you haven't noticed, faith is one of my favorite topics for this video ministry. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So we may as well learn what faith is and exercise those faith muscles every chance we get. Now, there's really only one way to define faith. There's only one definition. There's a lot of ways to word it, an infinite number of ways to word that definition. But faith basically is trusting God for a good outcome, even when we don't know how it's going to come out. Now, as I was preparing this message, I was searching for a way to word it that matches the story that I'm going to share with you. And I found that wording at church last Sunday on a plaque. And it says, faith is daring your soul to go beyond what your eyes can see. I'm going to repeat that, and you can read it on the screen. Faith is daring your soul to go beyond what your eyes see. That's perfect. That's exactly what Jesus said to Joshua as they were looking over the city of Jericho. What? Jesus and Joshua? Jesus wasn't around in the Old Testament. Oh, yes, he was. Jesus is all over the Old Testament. Let's take a look. In the book of Joshua, chapter 5, Joshua has an encounter with Jesus Christ that knocks him off his feet. Starting in verse 13. And it came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us or for our adversaries? And so he said, No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. This is a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. It's called a Christophany, and it happened more than a few times in the Old Testament. You just have to know where to look. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshiped and said to him, What does my Lord say to his servant? Then the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy. And Joshua did so. So they're standing there, looking over the city of Jericho, which is the first city that the Israelites encountered in the Promised Land. And Jesus challenges Joshua's faith in a big way. Now, if you know anything about Joshua, you know he was one of the two spies who had enough faith to believe that the Israelites could overtake their enemies in the Promised Land. And their first order of business was to invade the city of Jericho. Starting in verse 1, chapter 6. Now Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. The city of Jericho was surrounded by walls 18 feet thick. And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hands, its king, and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all of you men of war. You shall go around the city once. This you shall do for 6 days. He went on to explain to Joshua, on the seventh day, I want you to march around the city 7 times and blow your trumpets, and the walls will come tumbling down, and you can go in and take the city. Now that's pretty crazy and a pretty big stretch of faith for Joshua to believe that marching around a city 7 times and blowing a trumpet would crumble the walls. But that's not really the point. Here's what I want you to notice. Before the walls came crumbling down and before the king was delivered into Joshua's hands, Jesus said to Joshua in verse 2, See, exclamation point. See it happen. I have given this land to you. It's already done. He's telling him to see when there's really nothing to see. If you can imagine Jesus with one arm around Joshua, the other arm pointing to the city of Jericho, and I would be like, what do you want me to see? All I see is a city full of people who hate me, and it's surrounded by walls that I can't penetrate. But Jesus is saying, don't look with your eyes, look with your soul. And get a vision for what I'm saying to you. The victory is already yours if you have enough faith to believe me. He challenged Joshua's faith to a deeper level. And I gotta believe he's challenging your faith too. Does God have his hand around your shoulder, pointing to the goal or the dream that he's given you? Do you have faith enough to believe that he's going to do something amazing in your life? We're going to talk about this more next week, because I think there's so many Christians who really don't trust God to do amazing things in their lives. So I hope you join me right here next week and we can bring it home. Until then, you keep your eyes on Jesus and not on your troubles. Thank you.